1987 would start to see the return of Laurent Fignon. Third in the Pyrenees, third in the Vuelta a España, only 3 minutes behind the Colombian superclimber Luis Herrera. Later that year, at the Tour de France, it seemed that Fignon was absent from racing until the Alps. His fitness seemed to be building over the Tour. His name showed up in the top 10 on stage 19 and 20. Then on stage 21, the final climb, up La Planche, he took the stage win, supporting his rise back to the fitness of his yesteryears. Fignon would hang on for the time trial and finish 7th in the Tour. Also in 87, tragedy struck Lemond. Prior to going to Europe, in preparation for the 87 season, Lemond took a vacation. He went turkey hunting on a ranch that his father and uncle owned in the foothills of the Sierras, just outside of Lincoln, California. He was hunting with his uncle and his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law went to shoot what he thought was a turkey. Lemond stepped in front of him. The blast shattered the tranquil morning. Lemond collapsed into the grass. He looked at his hand, blood dripping down his finger. Bearing down, he tried to push himself up. But the world would start to fade under the strain. He laid there, struggling to breathe. His lung collapsed as the shot tore through his body. Finally, the highway patrol helicopter whisked him away to UC Davis. He went straight into surgery. All on the other side of Sacramento, Greg LeMond's wife, Kathy, was in labor. They were able to remove half of the shot that was lodged in his body, but to this day, there are still 30 pieces, including 2 that are lodged in his heart lining. His second child, born the same day. It would create respect for life that not many people would ever feel, knowing that all your hardships, the ones people see, the ones you put yourself through, will pale in comparison to the ones you have no control over, and how the worst day isn't necessarily the worst. That life is a mix of good and bads. He had survived, and he had a new child. Lemond threw himself back into cycling with a new vigor. One of a survivor. All the politics and arrogance of an elitist road racer shoved away into the races whose ego is the main driver. He embraced his fans, his racing, but no longer had the inclination to please everyone. He would race for himself. For Fignon, 1988 would be the year that he expected to come back to his old form. The form of a Tour de France champion. And during the Spring Classics, he did. A 5th place in the Pyrenees, a win at Milan-San Remo, second at the Criterium International, and 3rd at Paris-Roubaix. These results against the favorites of the upcoming Tour, like Sean Kelly, Pedro Delgado, and Andy Hampsten. Lemond, coming off his near-death experience, trained hard to get back into racing shape over the summer. He was on a new team, PDM. He trained, but his drive was too much for his body, and he developed tendonitis in his shin. The surgery would put him out for the rest of the season. Fignon entered the 88 Tour as a French hope to win again, but the Tour format was shorter and faster. No true leader emerged. Stage 2, the team time trial, System U was beaten down by the field, the team trying to keep Fignon from falling back. Come stage 6, the first individual time trial, the signs were there. Fignon wasn't a contender for the Tour de France. The once great champion had been reduced to a classics racer. By stage 11, the struggle had become too much. Being dropped by the field, Fignon lost 19 minutes to the winner. He knew his reputation was near exhausted and withdrew from the Tour for the next day at Alpe d'Huez. In a few months, his form had returned, and he top 10 the World Championship, won a small stage race, and generally placed well. But the Tour de France is the only thing that mattered. For Le Mans, the start of the 89 season was a mixed bag. The Criterium International, he took fourth, beating Fignon, who had come off of a win in the Milan-San Remo. Greg LeMond only raced 4 races before his return to the Grand Tours. Fignon pursued a full early season, and with moderate success. His best, after his early season win at the Milan-San Remo, was 4th at Tour de Romandie, in front of Urs Zimmermann, but behind the ultra climber Robert Miller. At the end of 88, Le Mans left PDM because of a doping reputation the Dutch team had amongst its peloton, and joined ADR, who had Coors Light as a co-sponsor, and felt Le Mans was a perfect fit. The 89 Giro was one that was in the midst of trying to rebrand itself as a great international race instead of one full of just Italian teams. The director of the Giro, Vincenzo Torriani, started making phone calls. He called Fignon, personally asked him to race the Giro, and with System U on budget constraints, even offered to pay to get him there. Fignon agreed, even with the sour taste of his previous treatments at the Giro. 7-Eleven would bring Hampsten to the race in preparation for the Tour de France. Le Mans' small ADR team showed up because they were made up of one-day racers, and with the GC contender in their lineup, they needed to prepare for the longer Grand Tours. To add a little more difficulty to the 2 former Tour de France champions on their return to fitness, an Italian team, Alfa Lume, filled its ranks with Soviet racers. Tour diversity had been achieved, and the perfect test for Le Mans and Fignon's fitness. The Giro started in Sicily and would hold 13 climbing stages and 4 time trials. There would be no rest for the racers, and would either create superhuman fitness or destroy the body. The race stayed together early on, even at the mountaintop finish at Mount Etna on stage 2. The bonuses, the only thing deciding the pink jersey. 8 racers shared 4th place after that stage, including Fignon and Roche. On the 3rd stage team time trial, Fignon was pushed back after his team finished 7th. 7-Eleven and ADR even further back. Fignon held 5th place through the southern parts of Italy until the time trial on stage 10. The favorites began to shine. Outside of Lech Piasecki, the Polish time trial specialist who dominated the field, the GC favorites, Hampsten, Roche, and Fignon, all finished in the top 10, and all within a minute of each other. time trial that boosted Roche into second and Fignon into third. Stage 13 poured rain. The finish at the top, Tres Cime de Laredo. Herrera attacked the climb at 12 miles to the finish. Fignon was ordered not to chase him. His team manager afraid of him blowing up before the finish, and, given his last few years of racing, was a sound strategy. Frustrated, Fignon kicked up the pace without an attacking acceleration, and finished a minute behind Herrera and 2 minutes faster than Roche, putting him in second. Eric Bruekink holding onto the pink jersey for his fourth stage. The next day was the most grueling of the Giro, the Queen stage. 5 high mountain passes and freezing, wet, treacherous descents with low visibility. Fignon looked for any way to gain the advantage. He had hot salve rubbed into his body to keep him warmer on the stage. It worked. Fignon rode aggressive, taking a page from his former teacher, the Badger. Fignon attacked constantly, waiting for a weakness to show itself. On the climb of the Campologno, Fignon attacked and broke the lead group to pieces. Herrera had crashed, and Bruekink fell behind. A few familiar faces stayed with Fignon in his attack. However, dangerous ones, Hampsten and Zimmerman. The pace was fierce. An Italian racer, Flavio Gioponi, won the race by 5 seconds over Fignon, Hampsten 3 seconds behind him, and Zimmerman 6 seconds behind Hampsten. The Tour favorites had shown a preview of their fitness, and Fignon had shown he was ready to get back to the front. And with that show of fitness came the pink jersey. The storms and cold weather continued, even causing stage 16 to be cancelled, one that Fignon could have been great at. Stage 18 was a hill climb time trial. The cold mountain wasn't kind to Fignon. An old shoulder injury flared up when it was cold and didn't allow Fignon to attack as hard when he stood up. The time trial was won by Herrera. Hampsten took third, carving a minute out of Fignon's lead, and Flavio Gioponi 30 seconds. The top 3 racers of the Giro were now within a minute and a half of each other. Each second was precious, and it would be a brutal scrap for any time they could make. Fignon was losing pace, and there were 2 more old northern Italy stages that loomed. But the race wasn't over. The cycling gods wished for a race, and that's what they gave us. The sun came out, and the warm Mediterranean air blew in. Fignon attacked on stage 20 up the Passo di Cencio Croci. The lead motorcycle had gotten in the way of Fignon and slowed him down, but a lot of fantastical and crazy stories came out of the Giro, so there's a 50-50 chance it's true. The lead group approached the finish, and Fignon put the power down and won. The scrap for time continued on the penultimate stage. On the descent, Fignon crashed. Gioponi and Hampsten jumped on the opportunity and attacked. Frantic and alone, with only a minute keeping him in pink, Fignon got up and started his chase. For 10 kilometers he pushed until he got to the rivals, and Fignon, being the scrapper that he is, grabbed an intermediate sprint and an extra 5 seconds, then fought his way to third, the finish, to grab another 3 seconds. The final stage, the dreaded final stage time trial. Fignon only a minute 30 on Gioponi, and Gioponi was a fierce time trialist. 50 kilometers of hell. The best digging deep after a tour that was so brutal, 15 riders quit or were eliminated on the last 2 stages before the time trial. Gioponi finished the stage third. Fignon fifth, only losing 15 seconds to Gioponi, and clinching the 1989 Giro d'Italia. The shocking news was Lemond. On the final day, he took second place in the time trial. The Giro had made Lemond suffer, fighting to make time cutoffs and dragging his spirit through the mud. The hell of the 89 Giro did one thing for Lemond. It got him fit, strong and recovered in a way that just training will never teach. To get beaten by your rivals and just struggle until you struggle a little less and get beaten a little less. The next race for both Lemond and Fignon would be a month away at the Tour de France. The 1st of July, Luxembourg. Fans lining the streets eager to show their support to their heroes on the bike. The undertone for the tour had changed. A new director had taken over, Jean-Marie Leblanc. Leblanc streamlined the flow of sponsorships into highly visible, highly valuable ways. This brought more companies with large amount of money to the tour. The undertone for the modern Tour de France was set. From the gun, the 89 Tour would be interesting. The favorites were back and showing good form. At the prologue, Erik Bruyking won. Fignon came in second. Sean Kelly third, and Greg LeMond fourth. All 6 seconds behind Bruyking. Fifth, the Canadian climber and former La Vie-Claire Super Domestique, Steve Bauer, free from the former team restraints and let free to win his own tour. More drama unfolded as the 88 Tour de France champion, Pedro Delgado, trying to redeem his performance and solidify his place as a tour champion due to testing positive for doping at last year's tour, wasn't at the start when he was supposed to be. Time clicked as the starting house sat empty. 2 minutes and 40 excruciating seconds would click by until Delgado runs up to the starting house and blasts off at a frantic pace. He would finish 14 seconds off the leader's time, but now was almost 3 minutes back from Fignon and Lemond. The prologue did what it was supposed to do, show us that all the favorites had all guns firing. And in 89, they were all aimed at each other. No more wondering if incredibly fast teammates were held back because they were helping a team leader. The stars were gonna shine at this tour. After a standard breakaway win on the flat stage 1, the first blow would be thrown by Fignon on stage 2, the team time trial. It wasn't a shock. ADR was built on classics riders, and System U was a hardened Grand Tour team. Early on, Delgado was in trouble, barely hanging on to his Reynolds team. But a strong Panasonic took the lead right after. They slowly got pushed down to 5th. System U showed complete control, organized, and together they crossed the line 12 seconds ahead of Panasonic. The top 5 were only 50 seconds apart. A few more flat stages and a rest day later, Lemond would get his chance to strike back at Fignon, a 45-mile time trial from Dinard to Rennes. Delgado, starting 10 minutes back, had a lot to prove. Starting early in the day, Delgado had used every bit of mental fortitude he had built up over his career. Burying himself, he pushed and set a time of 1 hour, 38 minutes, and 38 seconds. Delgado proved his pace as the other favorites began to cross the line. Roach, Hampsten, and even the pure time trialists like Simon Yates couldn't unseat Delgado. Lemond on the starting gate, with his new aero bars, set off. His pace was fierce, passing racers in front of him. His pace showed only one thing: the other racers would be forced on the defensive. Lemond would cross the line 24 seconds quicker than Delgado. Fignon wasn't going to go down without a fight. He knew his former teammate and knew it would take everything. He crossed the line nearly a minute behind Lemond and for a respectable third place behind Delgado. Lemond pulled on the yellow jersey, with Fignon ominously looming just 5 seconds behind him. The tension would build as the ceasefire through the flats led the champs to Po. Po, the gateway to the Pyrenees, would be where the battle would rage again in full. It wouldn't be Lemond or Fignon who started the fight. Delgado. His team of climbers sent a rider on the attack, a rider by the name of Miguel Indurain. He led the climb and won the stage, but the important part is it allowed Delgado to get away without causing a reaction from Lemond or Fignon, and bringing him back up the ranking. Lemond and Fignon crossed the line together, with Sean Kelly leading. Stage 10 was the classic Pyrenean standard, with the Tourmalet, Aspen, and Mountainton finish on Super Bagné. It was standard fare on the first few climbs. Delgado, Lemond, and Fignon rode together, Delgado with his teammates setting the pace to make up time over the top of the Tourmalet. Robert Miller broke away from the field with a few other climbers that led most of the stage. Delgado planned his attack. At the bottom of the descent, Delgado used his teammate to pull him through the valley and away from Lemond and Fignon. Up the final climb, Delgado would find the group of Miller and blow it to pieces. Delgado, making time up, attacked and attacked. Miller would make his response in painful grimaces. Near the top, meters away from the finish, Miller attacked Delgado and pulled the win. 3.5 minutes behind Delgado and Miller was the pack of Hampsten, Lemond, and Fignon. For most of the climb, they rode together, a pace to not waste more legs than needed, but to also not let Delgado take back his full 10-minute deficit. Out of the settled pacemaking, almost near the finish, Fignon jumped from the group and powered away, bike swaying under him. Lemond responded. He mashed his paddles up to Fignon. The power wasn't there. As he got on Fignon's wheel, you could see Lemond cracking. While Fignon kept pace, Lemond pulled back and jumped back to Hampsten's wheel, while Fignon pressed forward into the yellow jersey. The battle up to the finish looked like time had slowed down as Lemond ground his way across the line, but he was only 12 seconds behind. The general classification was now red hot. Fignon led Lemond by just 7 seconds. Behind them, Charlie Monet, a rider who rode with Miller up the climbs, moved up to third, not even a minute behind Fignon. And now Pedro Delgado was a dangerously close 2 minutes and 53 seconds behind. The Pyrenees were over, though. The interesting part is that the next place the racers would find themselves in a battle to take time was a time trial. But this time trial was a hill climb. The GC contenders didn't break into the top 3. Stephen Rooks had the honor of the stage. Pedro Delgado was the clear favorite on this time trial, and his form was spectacular. The fluid way he danced on his pedals, he just looked fast. There was no doubt he came to win. He crossed the line fourth, 49 seconds behind Rooks. Lemond, in his aero helmet with his tri-bars, powered his way up the climb. Who knows if the aero kit actually did anything practical, but mentally, however, it did wonders. A mind believing that you are moving so fast that the wind is actually something that will make a significant difference in the stage. With pure brute force, Lemond pushed up the climb and crossed the line. 8 seconds slower than Delgado. This was his way of showing Delgado he was ready for the Alps, and he wasn't about to let Delgado get close to the lead. Fignon, nobody expected would do great in the time trial. The wear of the Giro rearing its head, the weight of yellow crushing his shoulders as he sits at the starting blocks. Even with all his doubt, he put down a hell of a ride. He buried himself and finished 47 seconds behind Lemond in 10th place. Lemond had the yellow jersey back, and the pressure would be on him to defend it in the Alps. The next day, Fignon and Delgado began their media attacks to get into Lemond's head. The race was a different story. On the first climb, the Vars, Fignon already had fallen off pace, but he floated with a group that had some powerful climbers like Stephen Rooks and Sean Kelly. The group came back together on the Col d'Azur. The war up the Azard began. Monet attacked. Delgado attacked. Lemond responded. Delgado couldn't shake Lemond, but Fignon fell behind. Over the top, the rank seemed set, but Lemond is a madman and flew away from Delgado. Fignon, not a man with flimsy bike skills, attacked on the descent too. Lemond came to a small climb up to the finish of Briançon, a much needed and large gap. Fignon too got a gap on Delgado, making Delgado work to get the two leaders. Delgado came back, dropped Fignon, but Lemond wouldn't budge, and forced Delgado to sit on his wheel until they crossed the line. Fignon crossed the line 13 seconds behind the Lemond group. To the dismay of the hugely confident Delgado, he lost time to third place Charlie Monet and gained almost nothing over Fignon. Lemond held his jersey through the first Alps stage. Stage 17, Alpe d'Huez. The steep monster was the perfect backdrop for what was about to unfold. The start of the stage took them up the Galibier. The intense pace broke up the race, and by the time the race headed up the second climb of the Croix de Fer, the race had a breakaway racer thin the pack that Delgado, Lemond, and Fignon. The group crossed the top with only Miller picking up the pace for the King of the Mountain points. The race made its way to Alpe d'Huez. Miller needed to get up to protect his mountain climber competition and launched an attack. The group followed him. The acceleration didn't slow, however, and Lemond kept pushing with Fignon right behind him. Delgado fell back. It didn't take long for the group to come back together. After a brutal pace, the leaders seemed content, and the anticipation of Delgado's attack loomed. Fignon attacked, catching the group by surprise. Sprinting by Miller, Delgado pushed to respond, and Lemond fell behind. Fignon pushed through the crowds, but Delgado, just behind, slowly muscled his way back to Fignon just as they passed the 2-kilometer banner. Lemond crossed under the banner a minute behind them. The quick pace to the finish led to a sprint, with Delgado taking second and Fignon third. Lemond buried himself all the way to the line. It was just to limit his losses. Fignon would pull on the yellow jersey. On stage 18, the penultimate climb of the Saint-Nizier-Moucheray, the group of the leaders and favorites moved like a freight train up the climb, a perfect straight line drawn out by the intense pace. Fignon did the ultimate power move. not the fierce acceleration that most attacks entail, but a rise in speed. Soon, the group started to lose riders. The pace would raise to 19 miles an hour. Delgado picked up his pace to respond. Lemond, with not much to respond with, sat on Delgado's wheel, along with the polka dot jersey of Gert van Pyrenees. It was all in vain. Fignon powered away while Delgado looked for help from others. Help he wouldn't get. Over the top, Fignon had put over 40 seconds on Lemond and Delgado, and the other contenders who fell off during the Fignon's attack grouped back with the other contenders. Fignon crossed the line, and all signs pointed to him being the Tour de France champion. The countdown started. The pace from the chase group had been taken up by Stephen Rooks and Sean Kelly. Lemond stayed with them. Rooks crossed the line first in the group, Lemond sixth, 23 seconds after Fignon finished. Delgado, after burying himself, fell behind and finished 33 seconds behind Fignon. Fignon wasn't content to sit on stage 19 and set the pace, an attempt to buffer his lead on Lemond, well aware that Lemond was the superior time trialist. His pace really just created another race full of familiar faces, dangerous faces. The group raced down the climb, stuck to each other like glue, strategizing, knowing every second made heaps of difference. The climb wasn't enough. The group stayed together over the top and down the descent. They then worked together to hold their lead over the peloton and come to the finish in a shocking fashion. Good old spirit. It was Lemond who pounced, Fignon chasing after him. Lemond crossed the line, his first non-time trial win since 1986. And a sense of true camaraderie. Maybe it was from being teammates all those years ago, or maybe the euphoria of a great race. Fignon put his hand on Lemond's back, congratulatory. Lemond responded. This was despite all the media talk and the psychological warfare that Fignon was known for. It was a pure gesture, especially because the race would come down to the final time trial in Versailles. Stage 20 would be a day where the leaders wouldn't make any moves. A flat day to Versailles, where the final time trial would be. A day picture showed Fignon letting the iron wall around his personality down and enjoying the people around him. Fignon would play around and breakaway attempts and swap jerseys with riders. Confident Fignon going into Paris. Final time trial was here. Fignon started last with a 50-second lead on Lemond. Lemond decided that with a slight downhill straight down the Champs-Élysées, he'd be using a huge 54-12 gearing. That matched with the new aero position, he knew he could take a minute out of Fignon. Suffering from the saddle sores and nerves about his old teammate and rival's skills in time trials, Fignon opted to race comfortable and put his faith in his strength. His 50-second advantage, too. The race would be intense. Lemond had all the preparation he could, including wind tunnel testing, to perfect his position. Fignon, however, was in peak condition, and though Lemond was a better time trialist, Fignon was no slouch. Remember his '84 Tour win. He had won every time trial except for the prologue. Lemond set off, with orders to give him no time checks. He wanted to go flat out until he finished or blew up. At 7 miles in, Lemond had already dug 21 seconds out of Fignon's lead. There was still half the race to go. Fignon pressed forward, head down, the Eiffel Tower looming over the race. Lemond races through the tunnel, averaging over 30 miles per hour, the fastest average of any time trial in history. The pressure was intense, the speed incredible. Through the backdrop of the Champs-Élysées, the greatest battle cycling had ever seen raged. Lemond pushes and crosses the finish just moments after Pedro Delgado. The clock clicks by at an excruciating pace. Lemond waits nervous as Fignon presses toward the finish. 27 minutes and 47 seconds, 58 seconds slower than Lemond. Lemond jumps in elation. As Fignon falls to the ground, the yellow jersey lost. Fignon cries. He lost, wrecked emotionally and physically. Lemond hoists up his son on the podium, champion. The racers stand on the podium. Pictures of devastation on Fignon's face, which is no doubt what went on in his heart. Lemond said years later it was the only race he felt bad for winning. In reality, Delgado, Fignon, and Lemond stand on the podium, no longer enemies, no more strategies or mind games, just racers who did a hell of a job. The race was more than France versus America, the comeback story of incredible proportions. It was the culmination of two incredible young racers who climbed through the ranks, mentored by a great champion, then put to the test by the same old guard. The Fignon-Lemond generation cut short due to injuries and circumstance. The '89 Tour was a testament to the pure strength of Lemond and Fignon. The race that one more ounce of willpower could have shifted the race to some other side of the scale. The similarities continued for the rest of their careers. Lemond won the '89 World Championship, while Fignon took 6th. Lemond fell off after that, but Fignon continued the season, winning several more races. Next year, Fignon had a strong early season, then Lemond would win his 3rd Tour. Fignon would withdraw from the Tour after a crash on stage 5. Lemond would finish the year strong with a 4th in the World Championships in Japan. 1991 was different. A mediocre early season for Fignon and a near non-existent spring for Lemond. The two would meet again at the Tour, but 91 was the start of Miguel Indurain's run of dominance. Fignon would beat Lemond by almost 2 minutes for 6th place. The 92 Tour, Lemond could not get back mentally. When he watched Hampsten win on Alpe d'Huez and compared his climbing to Hampsten's, he knew his tour was done and dropped out. Fignon, helping build up a new talent, showed signs of the end in the Giro with a 32nd, then at the Tour suffered a 23rd place finish. 93, Greg LeMond entered 4 races, his highest result 13th. Fignon entered 2. The Vuelta y Ruta de Mexico, which he won, and the Tour, which he didn't finish, due to the insane pace Indurain had been setting. He retired after. LeMond came back in 94 for one last shot, and a new training program based on wattage and going to the sport psychologist. He went into the season like normal, not a very strong spring, but wasn't showing form by the Tour de Suisse. He dropped out of the 94 Tour, just like Fignon, due to the speeds. Unlike the beautiful duels that Hinault had with his protégés that signaled the change of the guard, LeMond and Fignon were steamrolled under the fast-moving pace of the 90s. A pace fueled by powerful new doping programs and a racing style that had come directly from the knowledge of how LeMond won. The culmination of great cyclists is about the entire journey. Rivals are cut from the same cloth, shared hardships and successes. While the world only remembers the duel, of many. Their battle that ended just 8 seconds apart was actually just two racers who had tasted victory before and knew the fundamentals of winning in their way. When you're on that line, whether you're a freshman racing your first high school event or a hardened vet in the Masters, racers around you will have a story similar to yours. The fears and responsibilities, growing through new technologies and training science. As for Greg LeMond and Laurent Fignon, they no longer represent one iconic moment of victory and defeat, of America versus France. They now represent the picture of racing. Two racers who climbed through the ranks together, who suffered and succeeded, who evolved the sport, and during the '89 race came closer together in all the ways that make a racer than anybody.